Hello and welcome to All Elite Morro. I nearly said wrestling fan wrestling show, but we're in a ratings war, and the wrestling fan wrestling show is winning. But Shane has continued to clickbait the shit out of me on the socials. I know some of you may have seen he clickbait the fuck out of me with my Bret Hart comments. I stand by the comments, as a matter of fact. How is the connection of the stream? Is it looking good? I can't see. Yeah, he clickbaited the fuck out of me anyway, the old bollocks. But, I can't say I blame him. I'm just going to check the stream health here. Should be okay. Yeah, so Shane clickbaited the fuck out of me on the Bret Hart thing. What I said, or the point I was really making was, for someone who's as good as Bret, he actually has surprisingly few, really, top 20, top 30, top 50, top 100 greatest matches of all time candidates, despite the fact that he actually has what is probably, one of the 3 or 4 greatest matches of all time in the Bret Hart Stone Cold Steve Austin WrestleMania 13 match. I absolutely love that match. I think it's one of the very, very best matches in the history of professional wrestling. Is this even working? I don't know. Fuck it. We're recording anyway. We'll plow on. What did you think of my comments on Bret Hart? Do you think SummerSlam 92 main event with the British Bulldog is one of the greatest matches of all time? I don't think it is. I think it's a great match. I think it's an unbelievable match. Unbelievable performance from Bret Hart. But I don't think the match itself is an all-time great. Loads of responses coming into that. R_N80, a non-New Japan wrestler winning the G1 tells you everything you need to know about where New Japan are. We'll be covering that in detail later on. Have New Japan become AEW's TNA? We'll also be covering that later on. Mark Dowd asks, how does it feel to be the biggest heel on the wrestling fan wrestling show? It feels fantastic, Mark. I love it. I'll be the heel. I'll be the one to say the things that the rest of these guys are afraid to say. I'll say it. I'll be the one to say The Undertaker's overrated. I'll be the one to say that Bret Hart doesn't have that many great matches for how good he is. I think what Bret is one of the absolute greatest wrestlers of all time. But I just don't think he has that many great matches. If that's a heel thing to say, then so be it. Also, do you think the failed Cena heel run will go down as one of the worst of all time? It was dog shit, wasn't it? It was so disappointing because, really, we've waited for years for a Cena heel turn. And that's what we got when it happened. You go back 10 years, 15 years, people were begging for a Cena heel turn, begging for it. And we just never got it. So, in that sense, I suppose it is really disappointing. What could have been, because it started so great as well. The actual turn itself was fantastic. Um, the angle that they did that night was fantastic. And I don't know, who do you blame for it? Do you blame The Rock not being there? But then I suppose it does come down to Triple H and his booking and his storytelling in the aftermath of The Rock not being there. It's they obviously know The Rock's not going to be there, so it's a thing of not telling the right stories or not giving him the right space and angles. We will get into this more because Cena came out this week and had some comments on his own, how he felt about his heel turn. The Rattenbury says, sad to see TNA go from WWE Alternative to NXT's bitch to a lamb to the slaughter. And that ties in with Oisin Mac. Am I rude to say TNA will get decimated in this hypothetical ratings war with AEW? And that kind of brings us to our first topic, TNA versus AEW. So there was reports during the week last week, not long after the UFC Paramount deal was announced, that there was potential uh, conversations going on behind the scenes for TNA to go get a proper TV deal and it be on a Wednesday night opposing Dynamite. Now, digging into the rumours a bit, it mightn't be too far away. I certainly think it's a possibility because for a station, and the rumour station is the CW, they've had NXT, um, and that is a channel that would look at something like TNA as being a very cheap property to get, particularly in the live entertainment slash borderline sports sphere. Um, by the standards of the 90s, especially in WWE, those Brett performances were def all time. Yeah, Ronan, definitely, like, particularly WWE. He stood out so much by being so much better than everyone. I think part of the problem with Brett's, in my opinion, lack of great all time matches is that he didn't have the quality of opponents that other wrestlers who are on Brett's level have had over the years. Like if you take All Japan at the same time period, which I'm doing a kind of a rewatch of at the moment, um, there's 5, 6 all-time great wrestlers at the top of that roster, and all their great matches came with each other. Even if you go later into the 90s, you could have Jun Akiyama, and so you're talking that they consistently had 5 or 6 like unbelievable wrestlers at the top of the roster. Brett never really had that. And like, the one rival who was there at the time was obviously Sean, who also had a number of great matches and great performances himself. But Brett and Sean worked each other surprisingly little. They had obviously the Montreal Screwjob, which is an unbelievable match up to the ending. That's their best match together until the ending. Like, that's such a great match, such great heat in it. Um, then they had this Survivor Series 92 match. That was a pretty good match. They also had, and it was hard to find for a long time, but you can get it now, the Intercontinental title ladder match. That was pretty good too. But for two guys who were like the best wrestlers of their generation in the same company at the same time, they had surprisingly little interactions. And that was the type of thing where we probably should have seen them have um, a match, like a big time match, at least once a year. Yeah, well, obviously they had WrestleMania 12 main event, and I got a lot of blowback on the TikTok and Instagram for it. I don't think that match is good. I think it just like it's paced so badly because they're going the hour. Obviously, it's an Iron Man match. I just think it's a pretty like poor match considering the level the two of them are at. Now, Sean's greatness probably came in a little bit later that when he started to get really, really like great, but you'd still expect more from the two of them. I find that to be a very disappointing match. I even had one person in the comments say that's the match that people look to when doing 1 hour matches. Like it's most certainly not. Most people look to Flair matches when plotting out a 1 hour match. I think modern wise, then you probably look to Danielson. How does he sustain engagement in a 1 hour match? More so than the Brett Shawn Iron Man match. I think if you're plotting out your 1 hour match based on how Brett and Shawn did it, you're making a mistake actually. Um, yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on Brett. A lot of it is that Brett didn't have the caliber opponent that other all-time greats had in the company at the same time as him. But it's also kind of weird that he didn't really always have great chemistry with other greats. Like he didn't have super chemistry with Ric Flair. And like in 92, 93, Brett and Rick should be having like unbelievable matches. But also like, he didn't get like the way Flair in the 80s got work programs with Steamboat, extended programs with Ricky Steamboat, extended programs with Terry Funk. Brett didn't have that same opportunity with guys on that level. Um, so yeah, that's, I suppose, addressing my Bret Hart beef. We don't have beef. He's one of my favorite wrestlers. And I did say as well about the British Bulldog match. It was that match is the reason I began watching wrestling. One of the first matches I seen that I truly loved. But I think that's an all-time great performance from Brett, not necessarily an all-time great match. I was thinking of doing a video for the channel as well, where I categorize in tiers what the difference between an all-time great match is and a great match, because there is a difference. Like Brett, the Roddy Piper WrestleMania 8 match, again, another match I love. That's a great match. It's not an all-time great match, but it is a great match. And like, that's not me shitting on that match by any means. Um, Back to the forthcoming or upcoming Wednesday Night Wars. So if TNA would be a valuable property to the CW, I think. They could get it very cheap. They could definitely get that for 20 million a year. They're already paying NXT 35 million a year roughly. So I think they could get TNA for less than that. So it would give them, from CW's point of view, the TV station, it would give them 2 hours of live content every Wednesday. And Ocean Mac asked the question, do I think they'd be decimated in a ratings war? Decimated is a strong word. I think they'd be soundly beaten in a ratings war. I don't think they'd be decimated. Now you look at the current ratings they do on the very small channel they're on. They're minuscule. They're minuscule ratings. What I think would happen is if they do move to Wednesday nights, you would see an initial decent rating the first night, probably in the region of 450,000 live viewers and maybe a point one in the demo. But I think after that, you're looking at probably 250,000 live viewers and a point zero 0.06 in the demo, which is pretty shit. Um, but it is pretty shit. But for the channel that's looking at taking them, it's actually not too bad. And that's the type of thing where they could get a renewal every couple of years on that like 10 to 20 million dollars a year range. But yeah, that's where my early predictions would lie. Would be the first night would do a decent number, probably be bolstered by NXT and maybe even like AJ Styles on the show or something. They do around 500, 400 to 500k live, all viewers, and then point one or so on the demo, and then they'd settle in at about half that, maybe a point six in the demo they might settle in at, which would probably be enough to get them renewed. But if they have 20 million a year or 10 million a year coming in from TV deals, that's far more than they're getting now. And it would actually make them a pretty healthy company. And it would also allow them to kind of lock up contract or lock up talent on better contracts, more long term contracts. And yeah, but they are most certainly been used in a pawn, as a pawn in WWE's war against AEW. The war is really intensifying. And I think the reason for that is because AEW have rebounded very, very strongly this year, both in ratings, which we can see, the Nielsen ratings for TV, and also WWE's current aggression towards AEW. I think kind of signifies that AEW are doing probably a little bit better than we think they are on Max. I would be shocked if Nick Khan doesn't have some sort of inside information on how they're doing. He might know the number, but he probably knows that the executives at Max and HBO are very happy with the numbers that AW are bringing in on that platform. Um, I think that's kind of really the reason why we're seeing this full court press in terms of counter programming shows, in terms of using TNA as a pawn, in terms of having people like Paul Heyman go on Ariel Helwani's show and talk about TNA being a potential number two. Oh, sorry, Bischoff being a potential number two. It's a perception war for WWE. And we know now they're counter programming All Out with what looks to be Bad Blood in September. They're they've already started their UK tour, or it's coming up in the next week or two. And that's the counteract AEW been in England. So they're coming to Ireland, they're coming to England, they're coming to other parts of Europe at the same time that AEW are coming here. This was planned a long, long time ago. Shortly after Forbidden Door 2025 was announced in the UK. Um, so we're seeing that full court press at the minute now from WWE. It looks like they're also going to counter program World's End, which is the last pay per view of the year, and it looks like they're going to go potentially seen as a retirement match there. So you're getting Cena versus Brock most likely going against All Out, and you're getting Cena's retirement match most likely going against World's End. So we're seeing the level that they're willing to go to try and hurt AEW. I don't necessarily think it's going to work. I think if the most success they've had in hurting AEW's perception over the 6 years of AEW is actually by them just putting on good fucking TV. It was at the time when WWE were doing good shit themselves and the fan base was happy. None of this outside work that we're doing through the media or through counter programming has ever really made a huge difference. The only time that they were able to, because AEW numbers were dropping, and a part of that was fans were migrating to WWE because WWE was putting on, in the minds of a lot of people, a better product. Now that the WWE product is, in my opinion, pretty shit, but also in the opinion of their own fan base, not like their own fan base aren't enthused or energized at the moment. So that pretty much kind of tells us everything, we need to know that maybe they're worried about fans migrating now the other way towards AEW. And I've seen a lot of that on Twitter recently. And even here on our channel, people asking about recommendations of where to start with AEW, what previous pay-per-views to watch. A lot of people tuned in for the first time and watched All In with us on the live watch along. So there is a bit of a shift, and we're seeing what WWE are doing to counteract that. Moving TNA to Wednesday nights. Um, do WWE just not give a shit about their own perception with these anti-competitive practices? Brian, yeah, they don't give a shit. This has been something. They're following Vince's playbook from the 80s when he killed the territory system. Um, the very reason Survivor Series was created as a pay-per-view was to counter-program Jim Crockett Promotions Starrcade, which would become WCW. Um, so this isn't new. Like this was in 1987, I think, was the first Survivor Series, maybe 88. But so we're talking like 30 odd years ago, or 40 odd years ago. I, I've been born around that time. Uh, So the idea of me approaching 40 is terrifying. So that's why I probably said 30 years ago, or some sort of Freudian slip in my wish to be 10 years younger than I actually am. So, Brian, yeah, like, WWE don't care about this because another part of why they don't care is part one is what they've always done. That's just how they go about their business. When there's a competitor in town, they will do a shitload of anti competitive practices in order to hurt the competitor. That's number one. Number two is WWE have such strong relations with a number of friendly media platforms that they can put a shine on those practices as if they're not really happening. It's only people like us who are, like, I suppose, super fans of wrestling that see that those anti-competitive practices taking place. Um, you'll never hear about that in any sort of mainstream media. That's all they give a shit about is really what is the perception outside of hardcore wrestling fans. But yeah, to answer the question, like I suppose initially posed is, I don't think TNA will be decimated in the reigns, but I don't think they'll be competitive in the reigns. The channel that they're rumored to go on, CW, doesn't have a tremendous amount of viewerships. It's not like a flagship channel by any sense, but they will do decent numbers there, and they'll probably do numbers good enough to get renewal. And I think it's I think like what the goal here is. They're not going to take fans from AEW by putting TNA wrestling on the same night. But what they might do is capture some new fans and stop them from migrating to AEW or stop them from starting with AEW. But it's not going to, I don't think, have any impact on the current fan base, the numbers of the current fan base. I think the only thing that will impact that, as we have seen, is a bad product. When the product's been bad, AEW has dropped. When the product's been good, the numbers have come back. And that's where we're at the minute. The numbers are coming back. We kind of see that week on week. And even with things like ticket sales are improving. They did 3,500 in an arena for a fucking Collision last week. That would have been next to impossible 6 months ago. Ronan says WWE are taking their eye off the ball creatively because they're so focused on too much outside the wrestling product itself. 100%. I think Ronan, that is like clear as day, actually. Like, we get all this WWE Unreal, but also we're getting like a massive amount of media interviews they're doing, and they're so caught up and focused on programming their events around AEW's calendar that they're not programming it in such a way that allows them or that facilitates them to tell the best stories possible. Just look at the last Saturday night's main event and how that fed into SummerSlam. SummerSlam ended up being a pretty decent event, all told, but the build to it was hampered by the fact that they had to go and counter program AEW 2, 3 weeks earlier. They didn't give themselves enough time to actually build one of their flagship events because they were so focused on this war that they're fighting. And what AEW have done brilliantly this year is they've stopped engaging with WWE, even to the sense that, um, to the sense that they have stopped signing ex-WWE talent. They're going more upon the along the path of unearthing indie talent or talent from smaller companies, and it's worked for them. Kevin says, wrestling is fake and boring, and you left out the last word, Kevin. Left the last word. Kevin, I'm aware wrestling is fake. I don't believe it's boring, and um, thank you for coming to a YouTube page called The Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show to leave that comment. I'm in your algorithm. You're probably watching wrestling content. Now, John Cena made some what I felt were real interesting comments about his heel run this week. I'm just going to pull him up here. Um, I thought it was just a real moment of honesty. He was asked about his promo, and he added that he felt he was left to pick up the pieces after The Rock failed to return. He said he wasn't upset about that. He says, I failed. Ain't nothing wrong with that. You can learn from failure. I went up there and I bombed. Shit happens. That was in um that was in response to people asking him about his failed heel run, and there was some questions on that tonight. And he feeling like he bombed in his first opportunity to cut a heel promo. And that's something we spoke about on the channel at the time, was that his first heel promo was one of these "you people" promos, a complete and utter shit promo, coming from a guy who's had like 30-year run of, or 20 something year run of cutting pretty exceptional babyface promos. He wasn't able to go and cut the big heel promo when it was demanded. But going back to the question that we were asked at the start of the show, do I think this is one of the worst heel runs of all time? No, I don't. I think there's other worse heel runs. But do I think there's been as bad a heel run at this level of a company, with this level of a performer? Probably not. I think, how do you define bad heel run? Because Stone Cold's heel run in 2001 what I think was creatively fun. And the segments that came out of it especially were fun. Not any super great matches, but not bad matches either. As tag team stuff with Triple H was great. Um, but it killed the business of the company. Fans just didn't want to see a heel Stone Cold, and fans left in their droves after Stone Cold's heel turn at WrestleMania 17, which is crazy because WrestleMania 17 is generally considered one of the greatest WrestleManias, if not the greatest. Yet business dropped massively afterwards. That by the end of 2001, they had like the ratings had dropped massively. Their um, attendances had dropped massively, their pay-per-view buy rates had dropped massively, and all that was really down to turning Stone Cold heel and running off a lot of fans who just wanted to see Stone Cold be Stone Cold. David Ayre says he enjoyed seeing his first few promos while not special. His delivery was good. Did you like his delivery? Yeah, I didn't hate his delivery. I just thought what I liked about his delivery was that he was trying to differentiate himself from babyface Cena. What I didn't like about it was I get what he was going for with that kind of slow, methodical thing, but I wanted a little bit more bite and a little more bitterness and spite in there. Um, I think he could have married those two ideas that he had with being the slow, methodical thing delivery, but having it just a little bit more bitterness in there in his delivery. Um, from like an acting standpoint, I suppose. With all of WWE's big moments this year, this is from Brian. The biggest problem for me has been the follow through. Yep, satisfaction has been the same. Yes, just nothing happening after they get yes. Brian, like building that coming out of WrestleMania, I've been on this channel loads of times and I've like always called Seth Rollins a massive dullard. I'm not a fan of Rollins. But after WrestleMania, when they paired him with Paul Heyman and um, and they brought in Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker, I was like, this could be a major. This is what WWE needs the injection after having, the bloodline thing is basically gone. I know they're still doing this other one with the My Family Tree thing, but it's not bloodline. I felt this could be their new bloodline. Now, maybe not to that level, but to have a compelling heel unit led by Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman with two really good young guns on TV, and they've wasted it. They haven't done anything with it. There's nothing interesting happening with it. Um, I just feel like every week it's something really repetitive with them, and they never get their comeuppance. Now they will eventually. Um, David says they're a mom's company, Brian. Yeah, they are a mom's company. Like they're so focused on what the next big moment is that they're forgetting to tell stories in between those moments. I think like WrestleMania and the Brock stuff at SummerSlam was a total indication of where they're at the moment. And it's like, this thing for Triple H to be able to wink at some interviewer and say, this is what we do. We create moments. This is what we do. Um, but yeah, like in terms of seeing his heel run, they pivoted away at the right time, albeit they just nuked it in one segment, which I thought was very funny. It was worth trying, but they didn't give it the energy it needed. And it did kind of, in my book, get a little bit better by the end of it, with Punk and with Cody, but it still wasn't very good. So for AW Forbidden Door, I was going to do a segment here where we kind of predict and build up to Forbidden Door. What I'm actually going to do instead is, um, before we move on, David says the best bits of Seth's group was the few weeks when Seth was injured, Braun was the leader. That is actually true. Um, that is fucking 100% true. Braun was so much more compelling. It's just Seth doesn't feel like he fits with those guys, does he? Like the two guys look so badass, and then Seth is doing like bad fucking Charlie and the Chocolate Factory rip off of, you know, yeah, it just doesn't work for me. Um, But I do agree with you on that, David, that the best few weeks were actually when Bron was the focus of the group. On the Forbidden Door. So I was going to do a bit here where I kind of preview Forbidden Door and talk about my feelings about the build of Forbidden Door and how forbidden is this door with, the lack of New Japan talent on it. But we're going to talk about New Japan in a moment anyway. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to record a separate video after Dynamite Wednesday where we preview Forbidden Door when we know all the matches. Now they have 9 matches announced, which is 9 is what they usually do. So maybe this is the final card. Um, but I just felt like there's really a lack of CMLL talent on the card, which is weird. Considering the TV time CMLL talent has gotten recently. And I feel like it's weird doing it and having no Mystico match. So I kind of think on Wednesday they might set up like a Mystico 6-man tag or something. They brought in Sky Team from CMLL with Mystico leading it. That'd be great. But I'm going to do a complete separate video previewing Forbidden Door later in the week after Dynamite when we see the final segments and we see what the build looks like fully. It would have been more interesting if Braun won Money in the Banquet set as leader. Braun, 100%. That would have been awesome. No, it was probably like I love that stuff where there's this kind of tension between the leader and an underling who is beginning to have breakout success. Probably would have been very early in the faction's lifespan for that to happen. But it's still like way more interesting than what we've been seeing anyway. And now, like with Set as champion, and they're going to keep Set as champion for a while. Is there a way to watch Dynamite this week live? Um, I watch it. Oh, live. Shit, David. Let me look that up because it's in Scotland. Is it being shown live? Let's just see. Oh, it's saying 1 a.m. That is this week, August 21st. Yeah, it'll be August 20th American time. No, it's saying 1 a.m. there. Looks like it's on tape delay. Fuck, that would have been ideal, wouldn't it? We have to watch it at like 8 p.m. our time while they're here. See, this is the thing, like with WWE's Netflix deal and being able to show it live when they were in Europe that time and it being on live our times and it was awesome for us. AEW have not developed that end of their company yet to the degree they should have in terms of in terms of like how robust their office is. Like WWE's office is insane with the people they have there and the deals they're able to cut and even like being able to do things like live like that. What's this? I actually can't imagine how much wrestling I'd watch if it was scheduled around Irish time. Yeah, that'd be fucking scary. That would be scary. Something would be on like ITV. Yeah, actually, ITV. See if we can get it up here. Oh, it's only showing us last week's stuff. Not for this week yet. Oh, that's a pity because that would have been awesome. Watching it at our time instead of Brian, David, Ronan, we could have had a little watch party or something. So yeah, after Dynamite this week, I'm going to record a video previewing Forbidden Door. I might do it live Thursday night. Or break down the card and get into the build in detail. I think that'd be better. I want to start doing that anyway. I did that for All In and I enjoyed it. So 2 All Elite Morros this week. So I'd like to have like be able to look back on a back catalogue of AEW pay-per-view previews in 6 months' time when they've done 4 or 5 more. We'll have a back catalogue of previews and reviews to go with it, which would be pretty cool. Recent comments on potentially Chris Jericho going back to WWE. Personally, I think this is the best move for all involved because I've loved Jericho's AEW run. I think it really adds to his legacy, particularly the first couple of years, and in kind of more ways than one. So, like, you look at having him signed early was so great for their development as a TV wrestling company. Having Chris Jericho signed, just having that name attached to them, and his first year and his run as El Campeon was like just so great. And even after that, like the Inner Circle was such a great faction, and his follow-up factions, Jericho Appreciation Society, I really enjoyed that as well. And like he's had so many great feuds. His Cody feud was fantastic. His John Moxley feud was fantastic. His initial Hangman feud was pretty good. Jericho going back to WWE would give them a moment to post all over social media. Sure, they'd love that. Would that be no? Sure, obviously Punk is the an AEW champion who went back to WWE. Jericho would be the second one. Because I don't think they're ever getting Moxley back. I just don't think. I think once Moxley leaves AEW or whatever, he'll just do some mad indies and stuff. Couldn't see him get Mox. They could get Hangman down the line. They could get MJF, but getting Jericho would be, in WWE's mind, something to shit on AEW about, capturing one of their previous champions. But also, I think it solves a problem for AEW in terms of he's one of their highest paid talents, who I don't think is a draw with their own fan base anymore. Like, I'm an AEW fan, and I think I speak for a good chunk of the fan base when I say that everything he's doing now is coming with diminishing returns. He's not as captivating as he once was there. He's obviously physically declining. But he's had such a great run. He's been super important to the company. And if I'm Tony Khan and I'm doing an AEW Hall of Fame in the future, Jericho's one of the first names I'm putting in. But I do think that what we've seen the last couple of years, particularly 2023 and 2024, when it was clear Jericho was declining, he had a great 2022 stuff with Eddie Kingston and all. It was fantastic. It was like he was on fire 2022 and early 2023. Jericho's biggest achievement was getting Jake Hager over. He got Jake Hager over. And Jake Hager, when he was Jack Swagger, got the mega push in WWE, and he just couldn't get over because there's just not a whole lot to him. Jericho actually got him over more than once. I think Hager had 2 periods of being over in AEW, which is bonkers. But Jericho is like just such a great mind for wrestling, I think. I think his AEW run has become a little bit derided in previous years or in recent years because of that what we're talking about, the law of diminishing returns, the declining physicality. Um, but I think once a bit of time is separated and we're 5, 6 years from now looking back on the early days of AEW and Jericho's long gone at that stage from the company, people will look at it very fondly and it'll definitely have added to his legacy. Now, New Japan Pro Wrestling. So, I'm going to go back to a couple of the comments that we had earlier. I think they're important for context. Uh, so, R_N80, which I think that's RC in the chat. A non-New Japan Pro Wrestling wrestler winning G1 tells you everything you need to know about where New Japan are. And you added to that, have New Japan become AEW's TNA? Not the second part. New Japan haven't become AEW's TNA. I think there's like a couple of ways to look at this. Takeshita is dual contracted to both AEW and New Japan. Takeshita is also Japanese, albeit not from the New Japan dojo. He's from DDT as his home promotion. And it's very rare, even in Japan, that even if Takeshita had never gone to AEW and he had come into New Japan from DDT, he would have had to work really, really, really hard to get over. Ibushi, Omega, both had to go through a few years of kind of being shit on for a while before they were given the big pushes. Um, so if Takeshita had come in that way, he'd have been shit on for a while. I think the big problem here comes from I don't think Takeshita should have won this G1. I think Takeshita should have been used in a position to put over Yota Tsuji in the final. But Gedo booked the final between an outsider, technically, in Takeshita and Evil, a guy that the fan base don't fucking want. But what you end up getting is you got the fan base, the New Japan fan base, backing Evil against Takeshita because Takeshita is seen as the outsider. And there is a lot of ill will from, or like bad feelings among the New Japan fan base towards AEW because they think AEW are swiping their talent. And it's hard to argue against that because they have taken Ospreay, they have taken Okada. Um, they've signed numerous New Japan talent to big contracts in the States. Um, and if you're just a New Japan fan, you don't give a shit about AEW. You're like, well, all our fucking best wrestlers are going there. Like these are supposed to be in a business arrangement with us, but they're taking our best wrestlers. I don't think it's that simple though, because New Japan has been in trouble financially since the pandemic, and the Japanese yen isn't performing strongly as a currency. So New Japan aren't in a position to pay Okada the kind of money he was getting before, and to pay Ospreay what a big time international talent is worth. So the alternative was those guys go to WWE, and then New Japan get no access to them. But I haven't had much access to them. But I think the way Okada and Ospreay both left is that I remember definitely Ospreay saying at that time that he, with the relationship between AEW and New Japan, he does want to go back and do shows in New Japan, but he had this big emotional goodbye, and he didn't want to like go back too soon, and that would have made his final run of matches feel less special. Um, so I do suspect that he'll end up on a Wrestle Kingdom like Omega did with Gabe Kidd. Um, but he's trying to leave it a reasonable amount of time. But this is a company that needs business and needs fucking stars now. Now, with all that said, I do think long term Takeshita is an excellent pick to win this because Takeshita is the best wrestler that they have access to, without a shadow of a doubt. He also has a huge appeal to the home fan base. I feel like it's too soon for him to win it because I think Yota Tsuji is also a fantastic wrestler. I think Yu Uemura had a great tournament, has a lot of potential as a fantastic wrestler. Um, Oiwa put on a great performance. Oleg Bolton put on some great performance. I know he's not Japanese, but he's also, he's been in that. He's seen as being a New Japan wrestler because he's been brought up through that program or through their dojo system. I feel like part of the problem with Takeshita winning is it has seemingly come too easy. It's his first G1 and he comes along and wins it. Was it a second? But also he's winning it at a time where the company's in dire straits and the young guns of the company aren't being pushed. I thought it was such an easy layup this year for Gedo to book Yota Tsuji as the winner. He's been the out of the young guys, Umino, Tsuji, um, particularly Umino, Tsuji, and Uemura and Oiwa, those four. Tsuji to me is the one that's, to use a wrestling term, kind made famous by Vince McMahon. He's been the one to try hardest to grab the brass ring. I really wanted Yuya to have a good run. I knew virtually nothing about New Japan before this G1, and I was so impressed with him. Yeah, to me, I've always liked Yuya. I thought he's had potential, but I really felt he had a breakout tournament this summer. he felt like the star of the tournament to me, the one that who had the most consistent best performances, even more so than Suji. And another part of why I think people have anger towards Takeshita is he hasn't performed as well as a guy of his talent probably should. And I think that's led to some of this feeling that he shouldn't have won it. Now, his semi final against Zack Sabre Jr. was incredible. He also had a great match with, decent match with Shota Umino. He had a great match with Shingo. And a good match with Gabe Kidd. So he has had some great matches, but I think people expected if Takeshita had done like a Kenny Omega 2016 G1 run, I don't think we'd be having this conversation. Or if he did the Osprey run 2020, 3 years ago, 2022, or any one of Naito's runs, we wouldn't be having this conversation because the fan base would have got behind him by virtue of how great his performances were. They just weren't at that level, and people expect him to be at that level because he probably really is one of the best wrestlers in the world. Look at the Ring of Honor match he had with Bandito earlier this year. Suji has that Naito type charisma and is so good in the ring. Run and see, yeah. Like, my pick from the start was Yota Suji. There was a They did a match a couple of years ago when Naito was champion. It was like Naito's last really good run on top, and they booked him versus Suji. Not long after Suji came back from his excursion, Suji was just so charismatic that I was thinking, and I'd barely seen him at this stage. I was like, put the belt on this guy now. What you waiting for? Like, because Okada was probably going to leave. Osprey was leaving. Naito was getting real old. No knees left. Um, Tanahashi obviously no knees left, but they never gave Suji or Yu Uemura or Shota Umino or Oiwa those signature wins against the likes of Tanahashi, Okada, or Naito, and now they can't get it because Tanahashi's retiring. Yeah, they can, but they can beat Tanahashi, and they've all beaten Tanahashi. But like beating Tanahashi now doesn't feel like it means that much anymore. Had they beaten Okada or Naito, it would have meant something, and it would have made this next generation. But now, like this next generation, they didn't get the signature wins out of the previous generation that were leaving, and now they're not even getting to win the G1. None of these guys have won the G1 yet. Um, so like this is like Gato's fault. He's just not making stars. And people can say what they want about Tony Khan or whatever, but this isn't his problem. And this is partially why, or this isn't his fault. This is partially why Forbidden Door build feels so kind of non-Forbidden Doory this year because who in New Japan at the minute is a money match for someone in AEW? You know, when Okada was still there, you wanted to see Okada versus Danielson. You could headline a Forbidden Door card with that. You could do your two guys from either company. But who in New Japan at the moment could you put in the main event of Forbidden Door against Hangman Page and it feel like this is the right main event? There's nobody. Because New Japan and Gedo haven't given Suji or Yu Uemura the chance. Because I think for me, they're the two. They have been pushing Umino, but I just don't think he has what Suji has. That, as Ronan said, Naito type charisma. They need to start building, or this Ronan again, they need to start building around Yuya and Suji as the new Tanahashi Okada Naito 100%. But the crazy thing is, Ronan, we're like 4 years into this, and they still haven't started doing that or they still haven't let those guys get over the line. Every time, like Yuya to me had the best performance in the G1, night in, night out. However, Yota Tsuji felt like the biggest star in the tournament. And what they end up doing is Yuya doesn't even make it out of the block. He comes fourth or something in his block, doesn't make playoffs. And Tsuji gets beaten in the semi final by fucking Evil. Evil is beating Suji in a fucking semi-final of a G1. What are we doing here? And you wonder why you can't. You're not making new stars because you're having a guy like Evil who has been doing the same shtick for years on years. The fan base is shit sick of it, and he looks even looks old and slow and crap now. And you're having him beat Suji in a big time G1 semi final. Suji should have beaten Takeshi in the final this year. Imagine the near falls towards the end of that final when the feeling was that the outsider, even though he's not an outsider, but the outsider, the AEW guy Takeshita, the DDT guy Takeshita, is going to win this G1 against one of our up and coming stars. And the near falls at the end of that match would have been electric. What are my thoughts on Zack Sabre Jr. as champion? I personally love him, but I've heard a lot against him on social media. I also love Zack Sabre Jr. I think he is an absolute joy to watch as a professional wrestler. Does He's been struggling to feel like the top champion in New Japan. But also, I think it's partly how they present him as well. They've never really presented him as the focus center of the promotion because they keep doing stupid shit with Evil and House of Torture. And Zack feels like he's almost like in a side quest. Him and the world title are in a side quest from the main things going on in the promotion half the time. Um, but I do think Zack is great. And considering with Goto out injured and making a movie, um, there's nobody safer in the company to put the title on as like a kind of a transitional champion. Because I think Zack is a transitional champion. He got a good run with the title last year, but business didn't do great. But also, I don't know if they pushed him hard enough. I don't feel like they didn't. Like I said, he wasn't really didn't feel like he was the kind of focus of the promotion. Maybe I should have had to take a few weeks ago. I don't like Zack Sabre Jr. matches. Okay, that is a hot take. Do you know as well, David? Though I don't think you're on your own with that. I think there's a lot of people who aren't enamored by his style in 2025. I'm actually really looking forward to the Zack Sabre Jr. Nigel McGuinness match, and the main reason being for that is on that Forbidden Door card. Oh shit. Um, on that Forbidden Door card, the Nigel McGuinness Zack Sabre Jr. match is going to be the match that's the most different from everything else we see. I think that's where Zack Sabre Jr. is like a real good guy to have on your roster. Is you're guaranteed one match every night that's totally different from everything else. And I think that's the kind of wrestling show I love is when there's this like great variety and I get to see a few different styles. Part of my problem with WWE is most matches are just stylistically the same. Um, whereas in AEW or in New Japan, you get stylistically different matches. And like some of them matches won't be for me, like maybe Sax matches aren't for you. But in a promotion like New Japan, maybe not currently at the moment, but like New Japan or AEW at the moment, you will have a load of shit you like on the card, and then maybe one or two things that just aren't for you. But because of the variety they give you, you'll always be happy with the majority of it. I'll probably enjoy the McGuinness match, but won't go out my way to watch him. Yeah, I get that totally. Like I do like Zack Sabre Jr., but I'm not a tremendous fan of Zack Sabre Jr. He's like some people like, if you love that style of wrestling, you will love Zack Sabre Jr. If you don't like that style of wrestling, you kind of feel apathy towards him. Um, which is kind of the way I am most of the time. I'm like, oh, cool, a Zack Sabre Jr. match, and I'll enjoy watching it when it's on. But like you, I don't generally seek out Zack Sabre Jr. matches. Now I did seek out the Goto match because I heard that was awesome, and that was fucking awesome. That's on my current list, my top 10 of matches of the year list. Um, I thought that was really great, and his match with Takeshi in the semi final was really great. He's one of your absolute favorites right now. I can see that as well, like, because like when he delivers, like he's had probably two matches this year that are what I'm trying to build my top 10 matches of the year list for the end of the year because I'm definitely there's something I've always wanted to do on this channel and we haven't done it. And I think it'd be a cool thing to have a video of as a record in years to come. My top 10 matches each year. But when I say like a lot of the time I don't care about Zack Sabre Jr., but he still has 2 matches on my current, or in and around my current top 10. There's not many wrestlers who have two, but Zach does. Um, Takeshita does as well. But yeah, it's weird. Like he's not a guy who I'm always going out my way to see, but when I do see him, I generally enjoy him. As David said, he cuts fucking fire promos. His promos are excellent, totally underrated. It's just so honest and from the heart and genuine, which is something that's lacking generally in wrestling when it comes to promo work. That's what makes Zack so special because it's that more than anything that draws me to him as a wrestler. It's like I love his promos. Um, right, we're 55 minutes in. I felt like I didn't have a whole lot to talk about this week because I've been away at a wedding for a few days. Um, Family wedding, and it went on for days and days and days, basically 3 days. And squeezing in watching my wrestling in the mornings, a little bit hungover in the hotel. Um, and then yeah, having the G1 semi-finals and finals. I watched them both mornings over the weekend, and just having Evil beating Suji nearly ruined my cousin's wedding for me. It's a terrible thing to say. No, it didn't. I was like, "Are you guys fucking serious?" Um, but yeah, luckily, but it was really weird because the Takeshi to Zack Sabre Jr. match straight after was excellent. Like it was awesome match. It felt like the fans had been killed in the building by the fact that Evil had beaten Suji. I think that kind of sums up where New Japan is at right now. Also, another point, I suppose, the last time an outsider won the G1 was Satoshi Kojima back in 2010. Um, and, if you don't know New Japan history, 2010 was part of the dark ages of when business was in the shitter and the roster, the, the likes of Nakamura and Tanahashi, while they were both great, hadn't lifted the roster up yet. That kind of came 2011, 2012. So the fact that it's an outsider winning this year and the last time was Kojima in 2010, I suppose kind of makes sense. This is the companies in similar places at both stages. Um, Brian, a final note for Brian. He finds Zack Sabre Jr. matches so realistic. I do think he's one of the most realistic looking workers in the business. And not only his technical style, I also love his kicks. I think his kicks look fucking badass. And so a lot of wrestlers could learn how to strike from Zack Sabre Jr. My screen keeps cutting out now. I can't end the stream when my screen isn't working. There it is. Oh, it's gone again. This has been a technical nightmare for me from the start. Right, I suppose that's the end of All Elite Morro for another week. Really appreciate the comments. Brian, David, Ronan, there's a few more earlier on as well. Even Kevin, who said wrestling is fake and boring. Really appreciate the comments. That's what makes this good. If it was just me here talking about wrestling with no interaction, this would be shit. So thanks a million for that. Um, watch this 100 times on repeat, and then we can beat the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show in our own universe created ratings war. Thanks a million. And I'll be live probably Thursday again if you're interested to do a Forbidden Door preview.